Hey guys, it is Wingy here and welcome to a brand new video. Now, as we have had Halloween this week, I thought I would take this opportunity to upload after the event for one, but also talk about some of the scariest Doctor Who stories, in my opinion. Also, they're just going to be from the new series because the classic series, as much as I love it, it's never really scared me. However, growing up with the new series, there are definite episodes there that stand out in my mind, so I'm literally just going to talk about them. However, hang on, if it's supposed to be a scary video, let's make it a bit more atmospheric. I mean, I literally look like a ghost now, but yeah, this'll do. But creepy atmospheres aside, let's get into it. So the first choice that I'm going to go to is what I think is personally not only one of the best stories that Doctor Who has ever seen, one of my favourites, but also the most terrifying. The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. Now, the reason why I think that this story is absolutely terrifying is because I was 10 years old when I first saw this and I was scared shitless. It was actually this story where I knew I would be a Doctor Who fan, because even though it was so scary to me as a 10-year-old, I just kept watching. I will say though, it was that scary and affected me that much as a kid, I couldn't watch this episode for 2 years after it was broadcast. But why is The Empty Child scary? Well, I mean, it's set in World War II, and as we know, there are a lot of things from the Second World War that look really creepy in hindsight, such as gas masks. The uniform nature of the gas masks in this story, when you see all those patients in that room, it just looks terrifying. Obviously, a gas mask is there to protect you from the gas. It isn't there to be aesthetically pleasing. But when you see those zombies just walking down the hall in unison in gas masks in really low lighting such as this, it's just such creepy imagery. And when they burst through to the bomb site later on as well, that's terrifying. But that isn't the only thing about this story that makes it scary. The main thing for me is the main empty child himself. I think there really is something about children, or particularly innocence, in scary things that just really gets me. It's probably because of this Doctor Who story why I feel that way, but I genuinely think the more innocent or childlike something is, the scarier it is. And as the Doctor points out in this very story, there is not a single thing a little boy would not do to get his mother. So not only is it small and a child and all innocent, but it's not going to hold back whatsoever. A really, really strong and creepy concept, executed perfectly, set in the right time period, and The Empty Child has got to be one of the scariest Doctor Who stories of all time. The next new series story that I want to focus on as being scary is Midnight. Now for me, I think this episode is actually quite overrated. I don't like it as much as other people seem to. If we're talking about the Russell era or the Tennant era or just the new series in general, Midnight probably won't be in my top 20. I'm not saying it's bad by any means, but one thing I will say for it is it's absolutely terrifying. Now the reason why I think this is because of how claustrophobic this story actually is. It's something that this story did really well. You have a small location, you're isolated within this location because it's a bus. You have a really small cast of about maybe 10 people. So already that is kind of a stereotypical atmosphere for a horror setting. But then something else happens that really takes this story over the edge. You have this creature that mimics. You don't really understand it. You never actually really see it, but it leads to the point where the Doctor isn't in control whatsoever. So if you mix the setting and the Doctor not being in control together, you get something that's really chilling. I absolutely envy David Tennant in those scenes, because the way that those two are mimicking each other and speaking to each other and repeating each other's lines and then saying things at the same time, that must have been absolute hell to get right. But it pays off. The performances are stellar in this episode. And it goes back to one of the older horror tropes where you don't actually see the creature. There's no blood, there's no gore, there's no real violence. It's literally just people in a bus, and they somehow make that absolutely terrifying. Something that really sells it as well is David Tennant genuinely looks terrified, so that's another plus that I'll give this story. But like I say, I'm not a massive fan of this story, but I know for a fact it's quite creepy, and it did give me the chills when I watched it for the first time. Okay, so I'm going to head back to the 9th Doctor's era, and I'm going to talk about Bad Wolf Parting of the Ways. Now some of you might be thinking, hang on, how is that scary? Well, for 10-year-old Wingy, it actually was. Now we got a glimpse of how terrified the Doctor could be with Daleks earlier on in series 1. But when you see a full fleet of them at the height of their power, that is how you write Daleks. This story is just a masterclass of Daleks, and it actually makes them scary. No one can stop the Daleks in this story. They tear through Satellite 5 like it's tissue paper. The way that they kill certain people as well, whether it's characters introduced in this story or the way that they kill Captain Jack towards the end, you're sat watching these characters that you've been watching for, I don't know, the first 2 episodes or a significant part of the series, and they're just gone like that, and it's all because of the Daleks. I said this in another video, but when you see Linda, with a Y, in that control room, and then you see the Dalek outside behind her just raise up and kill her in such a brutal and fast way, it really is shocking, and you think if you were in that situation how absolutely terrified you would be. Not because you're going to get shot by a Dalek, but because you're going to get sucked out into the vacuum of space. Now this story isn't all scary, it has its humorous moments, it obviously has the Big Brother stuff, but there's so many different twists and turns and shocks in this story, and the way that the Daleks are portrayed, it really is creepy. I don't know why they don't write the Daleks like they do in this story anymore. And that moment at the end where the Doctor more or less just accepts his death from the Daleks, like I mentioned with Midnight, when the Doctor's not in power, that really is scary stuff. The Doctor's supposed to be the constant, the one that you always know will get you out of that situation. When in this case he gives up, yeah, you'd be pretty terrified. For me as a 10-year-old, this one really creeped me out. Now some of you might be wondering, well, where are the Cybermen stories? Obviously, if you watch my channel, you will know I'm a Cyberman fanboy. And so for the last 2 on this list, I'm going to talk about not 1, but 2 Cybermen stories. The first being Rise of the Cybermen and Age of Steel. So, why is this one scary? Well, Cybermen are fucking terrifying. Now, with hindsight, yeah, it's not a brilliant story. I mean, I have put it on my top 10 list, and I do stand by that, but I think in the way that they portray the Cybermen, they're too robotic. Compare that to something like Earthshock or Tomb of the Cybermen or The Invasion or something like that. Yeah, these Cybermen are just shit. But what they do in this story is creepy as fuck. Not only that, John Lumick as well is one megalomaniac and an absolutely terrifying bastard. The idea that people would go to those lengths just to survive or extend their life by a few years is really worrying, and the thing is, I can see this happening in real life. I've said this in other videos, the Cybermen will happen one day, and when they do happen, I don't doubt that it'll be something quite similar to what happens in that story. People were literally dragged out of their homes and converted into Cybermen, and if they don't agree, well, they get killed. The concept of the Cybermen is terrifying enough. You see them and that's what you're going to become. You either choose death or a fate possibly worse than death itself. This story illustrated it beautifully when you see the brief glimpses of the cyber conversion in the factory, when you see them chasing after Mickey and Ricky, and then you see the shadows go into their face once they've killed Ricky. Even the stomp I think works in this story. Not in any others, but in this one it does. And the desperation of John Lumick as well is terrifying. The way that they just round up people from the street and throw them into trucks under false pretenses, and yeah, they just innocently kill them just because they want to test their new design of creature. Obviously, looking back now with hindsight, you may feel differently, and I think I do a bit as well, but I was 11 years old. This wasn't my first introduction to the Cybermen, but my god, it scared me to death. Not really, because I'm still here, but you get what I mean. And then sticking with the theme of Cybermen for my last one, I'm going to go with Wilden Up in Time. And no, I'm not going to include the Doctor Falls, because I think whilst parts of it are quite creepy, I'm just literally going to isolate Wilden Up in Time. Now, why is Wilden Up in Time on here? Well, 1, it's phenomenal, and 2, even though I'm 22 years of age now, when I watched that story as it came out, I think I was just about to go on a night out or something, and I caught up with it on BBC iPlayer. I was a bit freaked out for the rest of the night out that I went on after. First of all, the start of the story is diabolical. The whole 5-minute I'm Doctor Who crap, yeah, forget that. After that, that's when it starts going. So we knew that the Cybermen were back, obviously, and we hear about these creatures that are coming up in the lift, like, who's human, that guy's so panicked, and then Bill just gets shot out of nowhere. Like, that straight away just caught my attention. And going back to what I was saying about the Doctor not being in control, the Doctor was actually trying to get into control of the situation, but he just couldn't. They didn't listen to him, and at the expense of Bill's life. And that's when this story really starts to get creepy and chilling and scary. Bill is a character that we have grown with throughout the course of Series 10. Now, regardless of whether or not you like her, it's horrible to see someone that you spent so much time with gradually and slowly turn into a Cyberman. It's not a case of like in Rise of the Cybermen where one One minute it's Jackie Tyler, the next minute it's a Cyberman. In this, you see Bill with a chess unit, and then you see all the other people around her start to develop little bits and pieces of the original Cybermen from the 10th planet. And when you realise who Razor really is, which I did, even though there was the disguise, I saw who he was, you know what he's doing. He's manipulating her, he's gaining her trust. So then it gets to that point at the end where she goes into the surgery room and you see the handlebars and you think, oh shit, Bill's a Cyberman now, she's dead. That is terrifying. Now obviously the concept of you being turned into a Cyberman yourself, yeah, that is quite scary. But seeing someone that you know and that you've grown with throughout the course of an entire series, watching it happen to them is just as terrifying, maybe even more so. Characters that we watch on TV, you put yourself into those characters, you relate to them. So seeing that was really, really heart-wrenching and really chilling. And the way that they handle the Cybermen in that story, I mean, I praised it in my Series 10 review. These people clearly don't want to be Cybermen, they're just doing it out of necessity so they can live. Where the nurse has turned down the volume and it's saying kill me. The way that they're just staggering about in cloth and you just know there's a rotting corpse under there. That's why stories like this work. You don't necessarily have to see the ins and outs. You don't need to see a decaying corpse underneath that mask. But you know it's there. It's heavily implied. The atmosphere is there. And even though the Doctor Falls, I think, massively let down this first part because they didn't build on it, we still have Wilden up in time. And it's brilliant. And it's creepy. And it's scary. And like I say, I'm 22 now. That freaked me out. So if Doctor Who can still do that stuff when I'm in my 20s now and it shouldn't really be creeping me out, then bravo. Obviously, like I say, Moffat fucked it up and we don't know how Doctor Who's going to go now. Whether it's still going to be scary, I don't know. But all I know is at least we have Wilden up in time, which to me is one of the just best portrayals of the Cybermen. But anyway, guys, that's just what I think. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think? Do you agree with my choices? Do you not? Some of them, not all of them, whatever. What do you think is the scariest Doctor Who story of all time? And I know someone's going to mention Blink, but that never really creeped me out too much. I mean, I know a lot of people found it scary, but this is my list and I didn't, so it's not here. Also, I hope you guys had a good Halloween as well. I know I did. Me and my friend Dan, we went as two of the Doctors. I was Capaldi, not this guy for a change. And I had a lot of fun, so if you guys did anything Doctor Who related or you just had a good Halloween, let me know in the comments below. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you leave a like on it. Subscribe if you want to see more. But until next time, guys, you take care of yourselves. Goodbye. God, just looking at myself in the lens now, it's like a really shit found footage movie.